What is going on YouTube? It is your man R0B, and we are back at it with some New York Giants content. Took some time off. As you guys know, earlier in the season, we were doing some live streams on the YouTube channel, but the team and the season just kind of went down the crapper. And I'll be honest, it was very hard for me to continue to have motivation to be able to make Giants content and pump the videos out for you guys. I continued to do the lives. It just became very exhausting for me to continue to do that. And kudos to people that continued to do that. But you know what? I think I've had a little bit of a renewed vigor, so to speak, and you don't really achieve anything without hard work and dedication. And that's what I'm going to try to do. So you guys have my commitment here in 2025 and beyond, to try to stay consistent in uploading content and videos, whether it be roster moves throughout the season, draft, whatever the case may be. You guys are going to try to get, I'm going to try to give you guys consistent content here on this channel in regarding to the New York Football Giants. And that's my commitment to you guys. And in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about the state of the Giants and where we are right now as an organization thus far, going into year 4 of the Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen regime. Before we go ahead and jump into that video, do me a quick favor. Go ahead and smash that like button. It does help the videos get noticed. Smash that subscribe button. Turn on those bell notifications so that you never miss another upload. We're going to go ahead and we're going to dive right into it. So, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are going into year 4 of their 5-year contract that they got. And it has been rough, to say the least, the last couple of years. Year 1, there were some highs, right? Obviously, we go 9-7-1. We make the playoffs. Barkley has a great year. Jones looked respectable. We drafted Kayvon Thibodeau, right? With the coaching staff that we brought in with Wink Martindale and Mike Kafka, Dexter Lawrence, right? And some old faces that were brought back into the organization, guys like Landon Collins and stuff like that. It was fun to watch the New York Giants in 2022. And since then, it has been an absolute dumpster fire since that point, right? So I want to try to break it down from the bottom up to the top, right? And we're going to start with Brian Daboll, right? Like I just mentioned, in 2022, Brian Daboll goes 9-7-1 as his first year with the New York Giants head coach, winning AP Coach of the Year, taking the Giants to the playoffs where they won a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings and then lost the very next week against the NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, who ended up going to the Super Bowl that year. And since that point, since that season, Brian Daboll has gone 6-11 and 3-14. Okay. Collectively, including the postseason, Brian Daboll is 19-33-1 as the head coach of the New York Football Giants. Okay. And there's been a lot of antics and stuff like that that has been going on, right? As I mentioned, in 2022, we were riding on the high. We loved the enthusiasm that he showed, the heart and the excitement and the passion on the sidelines when they would win and stuff like that, right? And then the following year, we started seeing some things, some questionable things, right? Week 1, you're getting blown out by the Dallas Cowboys, and you keep your quarterback in the game. You keep some players in the game, and because you did that, players ended up getting hurt. We lost Graham Gano in that game. We lost Andrew Thomas in that game, right? And it was just bad coaching in the regard of you need to be a little bit more aware as far as what you're doing. There was a time where he threw a tablet, at Daniel Jones throughout the course of the season, right? There were just antics that took place that really put Brian Daboll's maturity in question and really caused some tension with inside the Giants and some of the coaches. We heard after the season had occurred that Joe Schoen had to get on one of the headsets to try to get Brian Daboll to calm down, right? a riff started after the 2023 season, and supposedly there was stuff going on during the 2022 season. But when you're winning and you have success, things are kind of overlooked. But we lost Wink Martindale after the 2023 season due to the fact of there being a beef between Brian Dable and him, something that Brian Dable could not manage, something that Brian Dable as a coach, right, knowing that you've got a very good defensive coordinator in the building, you need to be able to kind of swallow your own pride, right? It wasn't like Wink Martindale, I think, was trying to, go behind his back or overstep, his rule or overstep his authority, right? I think it really just came down to the fact that in that season, Wink Martindale had the defense playing phenomenal. I mean, over a 7 week or 8 week time span, they had 19 turnovers. They were, ranked up there as far as defensively, right? And the offense averaged 15.6 points per game and couldn't get anything done. And I think that started a problem. You heard McKinney saying things throughout the season that he was tired about the defense kind of getting the blame and getting the shellac, right? And there was that, right? So I think when you look at it, Brian Dable didn't do those things, right? Brian Dable didn't do what he needed to do to try to keep a good coaching staff together. So Wink Martindale basically leaves, and they have the opportunity to bring in another defensive coordinator, to bring some guys in. One of the guys that they brought in, which a lot of us discussed and that we, were kind of for because it matched some of the personnel, right, that we've got, and it was a similar play style, was Denard Wilson, who was a defensive backs coach for the Baltimore Ravens. And they brought him in and they wanted to hire him. But some people, shout out to my man Authentic, he let us know that, there were, you know, he wanted to bring in his own coaching staff, and, you know, he, they basically told him no. They basically told him no. And to me, like, that's just crazy, right? At this point, like, I don't think that you're in a position, after everything that just happened, you're not really in a position to try to make demands, but they did. And they ended up settling for Shane Bowen from Tennessee. And we saw how that went last year. We'll get into last year, right? So, ultimately, I think that Brian Dable coming out of the 2023 season had a lot of red flags. Borderline, you could even say that some of the things that he did and the way he went about things was fireable in its own merit. Even after just coming off a season where you went to the playoffs, you won a playoff game, you won Coach of the Year. After that year, a lot of people were done. Now, for me, I was like, you know what? I get all that. I have a lot of questions, but you know what? You had a bad year coming off of a good year. You were riding a lot of highs the year before. You got hit with adversity, right, in year two. How are you going to bounce back in year three, right? How are you gonna attack that adversity, right? Um, and then last year, and we go 3-14, 3-14 last year, um, and in 2023 they won some games that they really had no business winning. And this year they won a game that they had no business winning. And this year yet again, so you went from 21.5 points per game in 2022. You dropped down 6 points, right? You jumped down 6 points, or just under 6 points, to 15.6 in 2023. And then you jumped up to 16.1 in 2024. So in the year 2024, the New York Giants were scoring 16 points per game. And that's just crazy to me. An offensive guru like Brian Dable, right, coming over from Buffalo, who we all are familiar with Buffalo and how they go about their business, and not here, right? Now, granted, people will say, well, they have Josh Allen over there, right? Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that part as far as the overall personnel. And that's more on the Joe Shane side than the Brian Dable side. Brian Dable is to coach the personnel, right? And I know that they have, a very hands-on relationship where, they are in constant communication, they agree on things and whatnot. But I think in some capacity, I've I don't know how that relationship fared when it came to building this roster. Um, so then last year, the defense for the most part, the defense, I believe for the first 6, 7 weeks, I mean, fared pretty well. Week 1, they didn't look good. They kind of ramped it up a little bit in week 2. I would say from week 3, which was the Browns game, which was week 3, up until probably like week 6 or week 7, the defense was playing really good. Defense was playing really good. We were kind of holding the run in check. We were getting a ton of sacks, a ton of pressure. We were leading the league in sacks. We were holding our opponents to 20 points or less per game, and we felt pretty good about the defense. And then yet again, it just got to a point where the offense could not sustain, and at that point, the defense paid the price for it. And so you can only go so long when your defense is playing really good football, getting after the quarterback. We weren't forcing the turnovers that we did the year prior. Um, I think up until that point, we only had like one interception, and that was by Muasau, the rookie linebacker that we had. We also had a fumble, but as far as like turnovers, I think we only had like maybe 2, 3 turnovers at that point in the season. And you can't do that, right? And so I'll be honest, I believed that these guys were going to be back because I believe that this organization doesn't necessarily do the right thing, mainly the owner, right? It's up to the ownership, John Mara and his contingents, right, to make the decisions whether you want to move on from this GM and this head coach or just the coach or just the GM or whatever. And they chose to bring both of these guys back. And when it comes down to it, I believe that these guys would be back because I did not believe that the Giants would make the smart decision. Although I said the smart decision, what I wanted is these guys fired because I did not feel comfortable with these guys coming back in for a 4th year. At that point, Jones had gotten released. You lost McKinney in free agency. You didn't trade him the year prior in 2023. You let him walk out the building. You didn't trade Barkley. You let him walk out of the building in 2023 offseason. You didn't acquire anything for him. I think that we got a comp pick for McKinney, but it was just poor roster management. And then you lose a safety, then you draft a safety, and we're going to talk about the draft class here in just a little bit when we go over with Joe Shane. But, it's just the decisions that were made within this organization were not of the greatest. And they could have been better. And they should have been better. And they weren't. They were not. And so I thought that these guys should get fired. These guys should get fired, but John Mara brought them back, and now we're in a position going into year 4 where there is not only pressure on the head coach Brian Dable, but head coach on the general manager Joe Shane, that they need to put a product out there on the field. They need to put a product out there on the field. Now, at this particular point, there's no use crying over spilled milk. I can't cry that these guys are back. These guys are here, and the only thing I can do at this point is hope that they fix it somehow, that they get it, that John Mara was right about bringing these guys back, and we were all wrong, and John Mara was right, and that these guys are actually really good, and they're going to all of a sudden start doing the right things, right? Very unlikely, but I mean, at this point, what else do we have? I think complaining about these guys being here is kind of pointless because that can't happen. All right, that's not going to change, at least in the near future, right? In the immediate future. Now, once the season starts and stuff like that, if there's a lot of losing that's going on, and based on moves in the offseason, how that looks, now we could maybe potentially have that conversation about somebody getting fired within season. But that's nor here nor there. So that's kind of where we're at with Brian Dable. What is Brian Dable going to do offensively when it comes to the New York Giants, right? I've got a video that's going to be coming out where I'm going to be diving into some free agents that the New York Giants are going to be looking at and positions that I think that they should attack right? And we're gonna go position by position, um, and we'll get into that. But Brian Dable, they need to be. This offense. I mean, you've got Malik Neighbors, right? You drafted Malik Neighbors last year. Tyrone Tracy looks like a decent football player. You have Andrew Thomas coming back from injury. Jermaine Illuminor, Theo Johnson that's going to be coming back from injury. You need to get a quarterback in the building here. And what is your offense going to look like? What is your offense going to look like? And they need to be averaging over 20 points per game. They really do, right? So now, granted, I mean, the Washington Commanders, I believe were scoring, I think it was like 18 or 17 points per game last season prior to this previous season, so 2023. They drafted Jaden Daniels and they were scoring 25 to 30 points per game, right? Now, I'm not saying that I'm not sitting here saying that Cam Ward is going to do that or Shador Sanders is going to do that or Jackson Dart's going to do that or whatnot. But I'm also not saying that they couldn't do that, right? At the end of the day, you need everything to go the right way. Things need to click. And that's asking a lot, right? But I would hope, I don't think that it's wrong to say that with a quality veteran quarterback here and one of these rookies, that I don't think that you could see, I don't think it's crazy to say that you could see improvement in the offensive production as long as if Brian Dable and whoever is calling plays is able to call plays and have success with the quarterback that you've got on the roster. And that's another thing, too, that, you had Mike Kafka calling plays in 22. At some particular point in time during the year in 23, we believe that Brian Dable took over the play calling, and Brian Dable was calling plays in 2024. And the offense was not very good in 2024. The red zone offense was not very good in 2024 or in 2023. In 2022, we had some of the best red zone offense that we could possibly fathom. Mike Kafka did a solid job with inside the 20-yard line, right? I believe that we were saying that anything from, your own 20, to the opponent's 20 is where we were lacking explosiveness and lacking creativity. But once we got into the 20, once we got into the red zone in 2022, we were scoring. We were scoring touchdowns. We were very, very good in the red zone. And so that's something that needs to be improved upon as well. Big plays need to happen for the Giants going into 2025. We need to generate some big plays down the football field and need to be getting more aggressive inside the red zone and putting up points rather than going 3 and out or going for it, on fourth down and missing it or coming away with field goals. These teams that we're going to be playing this year, they're good football teams, and you need to put up touchdowns. You can't be settling for field goals or settling for not getting any points at all. So let's turn our focus on to Joe Schoen, right, as the GM. And Joe Schoen as the GM, man, when these guys got here, they hit the ground running, right? They released James Bradbury, took some cap loss there, but free up a little bit of cap space. They also, got rid of Blake Martinez, who was a top linebacker for us that we got from Green Bay. They did not pick up Daniel Jones's fifth-year option. And at that point, we were kind of excited, right? They didn't really have a lot of money to work with. They restructured, some money with Leonard Williams to try to free up some cap space. I also believe they did something with Graham Gano. And in year one, this was the draft class, right? Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, which were touted as two top draft prospects, in that draft. Wando Robinson in round 2, Josh Azudu and Cordell Flott in round 3, Daniel Bellinger, Dane Belton in round 4, Micah McFadden in round 5, DJ Davidson and Marcus McKeithen to join Micah McFadden in round 5. And then round 6, we rounded it off with Darian Beavers, right? And so when you look at the free agent market, right, what they did in free agency, they brought in Mark Lewinsky, they brought in some players. We didn't really have a number one corner on the roster other than Adoree Jackson, right? Adoree Jackson was on there. They brought in Fabian Moreau, during the season or in training camp, who ended up being a pretty productive player for us in 2022. Um, but it was basically they were just doing what they could do to get by that year. They had very minimal cap availability, but we had, I think, 11 draft picks that year, and that's who they took. And I think going into it, you're like, all right, you took a Kayvon, you took an Evan Neal, Wando Robinson. Okay, like you could maybe try to build something off of these guys, right? And I would say when you go in, right, Daniel Bellinger started off pretty decent, got injured in the Jacksonville game in 2022, and ever since that point, last year and this year, seems like he's falling out of favor with this coaching staff, getting minimal opportunities, committing a lot of penalties as well. Not really too sure what's going on there. Evan Neal at this point looks like an absolute failure, and Joe Shane and Brian Dable show little enthusiasm of trying to right that wrong by maybe trying to see where they can put Evan Neal to try to see if he can make an impact or be a good player on this football team, right? By moving him to guard, they didn't seem to want to do that. Kayvon Thibodeau seems like a good player, but definitely leaves more to be desired on where he was taken. Josh Azudu looks is an absolute failure. Cordell Flott is somewhat improving, right? I think he's a good rotational piece. He played decent last year, right? Had moments in 2022, but again, probably based on what you've seen thus far, maybe not of the result that you're looking for of somebody that you took in the top 100. Dane Belton is a guy that when his name has gotten called, I mean, he's made some plays. He's made some plays, right? But all in all, it seems like they're using him more as like a special teams guy and a rotational piece, right? Last year, after that you let McKinney walk, right? You had every opportunity where you could have gave Dane Belton an opportunity to play the season, and you chose not to do it. You chose to replace McKinney with Tyler Nubin, who I don't dislike Tyler Nubin at all, but you had two young safeties in Javarius Owens and Dane Belton that you invested draft capital in. Why not give those guys an opportunity? And you brought in a guy like Jalen Mills in free agency last year. Let those young guys play and see what you have in them, and they didn't do that. Micah McFadden, really, to be honest with you, looks like the best hit in that draft class, overachieving his draft position in round 5, probably playing like a round three pick. Right, he's playing really good for us, really good contributor. Definitely outplaying his draft position. DJ Davidson is what a 5th rounder would be, right? He's just a rotational guy that really doesn't make much of an impact, but you got to try to hit on some of those late picks, and he's just not it. Marcus McKeithen no longer on the team. Darian Beavers unfortunately suffered an ACL injury in 2022, came back in 2023. Just never really recovered, and they released him. And so he never recovered from that, and that was it. You fast forward to the following year, right? So we make the playoffs, they go 9-7-1, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, lose in the divisional round of the playoffs to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they decide at that point what it seemed like they were at a pivot. Joe Shane was at a pivot point where he said, you know what? I've got 2 big-time, players that are due contracts. I've got Daniel Jones and I've got Saquon Barkley. And at that point, realistically, what you should have done was shouldn't have brought either one of those guys back. But if you were going to bring anybody back, obviously you bring the quarterback back. But what they should have done is they should have brought him back on the tag, right? Now, they could have tagged him. They could have made a lot of the same other moves that they did by bringing in Bobby Okereke and doing all that other stuff, right? They could have made all of those moves, even with tagging Jones, and they could have signed Barkley and if they wanted to and given him a contract or something like that and still made everything work. But they chose not to do it, right? They gave Jones the 4-year, $160 million deal, and they gave Barkley the tag, ultimately, which turned into a 1-year deal of like $10 or $11 million, and they let it ride out. And obviously, we see where it is. They traded a pick 100 that they got from the Kansas City Chiefs when they traded Kadarius Toney they took that pick and they traded it to the Kansas City Chiefs. No, sorry, not the Kansas City Chiefs. To the Vegas Raiders for a Darren Waller, which at the time, all right, Darren Waller, 30-year-old, tight end, coming off of an injury. He's had a couple years of injury, but he really hasn't played that much football, so he doesn't have too much tread on the tires. Maybe he's got something to prove, right? Might be a good acquisition for the Giants. Give Daniel Jones a weapon, and you see what you got. And that never materialized, and then he ends up retiring after the season is over. And you had people, teammates, during the season where he was contemplating retirement, right? Which is funny now because some of the players that they're talking to, they're trying to get a gauge on, hey, are you going to retire? What I want you in the right headspace. I want you in the right mindset, right? Probably has something to do with what happened with Darren Waller. And so you go in, so you trade for Darren Waller, free agency, right? You bring in John Runyon, you bring in Jermaine Illuminor, you sign him, you bring in Stinney. I mean, they brought in so many offensive linemen. And you don't sign, you traded away Leonard Williams during the season. You bring in Nacho in free agency. And then you go into the draft. Now, granted, that year, Jones gets hurt. He hurt his neck, was out, hurt his neck in the Miami game, comes back for the Vegas game, tears his ACL. And at that point, you're in play for a top 3 pick. You win meaningless games. You fall yourself out of favor. And then you go to the combine, and in the process, you're like, wow, these quarterbacks are really good, right? And you try to go ahead and maybe try to make a trade up to get Drake May, supposedly. And by all accounts, from, things that came out, the Patriots were willing to play, at least Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo were okay with trading down. Robert Kraft and the contingents that he brought in outside, outside people said, no, we're going to keep the pick. You didn't get that done. So you draft Malik Neighbors. They appeared on Hard Knocks and looked like absolute buffoons going into this season. Looked like absolute buffoons and just absolute clueless to what's going on in the league. And, people saying that they're highly respected. I highly doubt it. You're saying that they're highly respected. I highly doubt it. Okay. Maybe on a personal level, they're respected because they're nice people. But as far as their business acumen and how they do business, no. Their decision-making is poor. So no, I don't agree with that. And so you go into that draft, and in this draft here, you don't have a 4th-round pick. You got a 1, a 2, a 3, a 5, a 6, and 2 7s. All right? So you've got 7 picks. Okay, 7 picks. They move up a spot to take Deonte Banks, a corner. They couldn't get John Feliciano re-signed, so they went ahead and they drafted John Michael Schmitz in the 2nd round. Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd. Eric Gray, a running back, in the 5th round. Trey Hawkins, a corner, in the 6th round. Jordan Riley, a defensive tackle, in the 7th round. And Javarius Owens, a safety, in the 7th round. Owens is not on the team anymore. Riley, I don't think, plays all that much. Trey Hawkins became a preseason warrior, got put out there week 1 and got absolutely torched and was benched and was never to be seen again. Eric Gray was a special teams guy that fumbled the football and, couldn't get anything going there. Jalen Hyatt got some reps, right? And showed a little bit of something in his rookie season, mainly with some of the other guys like Tyrod Taylor, because Jones was out. John Michael Schmitz looked okay, then suffered a shoulder injury, I believe. And when he caught back, he really did not look very good. Looked like he regressed. Tay Banks had an okay rookie season. Okay. Like typical rookie season. Fast forward, Javarius Owens last year, not on the team, right? Banks did not look good last year. Schmitz did not look good last year. Hyatt, at some points, I wondered if he was still on the team. He couldn't even get on the field. Okay? Mind you, there were games where Neighbors missed like 3 weeks, and he didn't even really get any burn, any passes, anything. Eric Gray was a preseason warrior where he had a big game. I think it was against Carolina or somebody. It might have been Detroit. Had some big runs, scored a couple of touchdowns, and it was like, okay. And then after that, nothing. Trey Hawkins, I think he got an interception, but it was at the end of the season. Like I said, Owens was cut. Riley got some playing time here and there, and that's it. And that's your 2023 draft class. So now you're going into year 4, and you've got to make decisions now going into year 4. You've got to make decisions on Kayvon Thibodeau. Do you want to pick up the 5th-year option? Evan Neal, do you want to pick up the 5th-year option? When you go back to that 2022 draft class, Kayvon Thibodeau is probably the only one, and Micah McFadden are the only two that I could say, definitively right now, Kayvon should get his 5th-year option accepted, and if they wanted to extend and offer a contract to Micah McFadden, I would understand it. But Daniel Bellinger, why are you going to extend him? You don't play him. Wan'Dale Robinson has been a guy that I like him, but maybe he's been a product of, maybe just his skill set doesn't really mesh well with what they're trying to do, along with the fact of not good quarterback play. I'm not extending him at this particular point in time. Josh Azudu, absolutely not. Cordell Flott, absolutely not. Dane Belton, absolutely not. DJ Davidson, if you want a depth piece, and because he's not going to cost you much, fine. McKeithen's not on the roster, and Beavers is not on the roster. So then fast forward to last year's draft, 2024. You had every opportunity, try to trade up, you didn't. But then at 6, you had 3 quarterbacks available to you. You had Michael Penix, J.G. McCarthy, and Bo Nix available to you. They fell there. You didn't have to trade. You didn't have to do a damn thing. They fell there. And they said, we're taking Neighbors, and this is the year for Daniel Jones. So in a year where you went in and you signed Jermaine Illuminor, you sign Runyon. Your right guard spot was a question mark. You traded away Leonard Williams, right? You traded away Leonard Williams the season before. They did not take one offensive lineman, not a swing tackle, not a guard, not a defensive tackle, not an edge, nothing. They took Malik Neighbors at 1, Tyler Nubin in the second round. First round at 6, they took Malik Neighbors. They took Tyler Nubin, Andrew Phillips, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, and Darius Muasau. Darius Muasau got a pick in week 1, and that was the only, the 2 rookies, and then Drew Phillips forced a fumble. Those were the only 2 turnovers caused by rookies for weeks. Obviously, Malik Neighbors had a great year. Good year for him. Nubin, I think, was leading all rookie safeties and tackles before he got hurt. Phillips looks like a decent player. Theo Johnson, I like him. I like his size. I like his skill set. I need to see another year of him. Tyrone Tracy looks pretty solid. And Darius Muasau is a special teams guy. Joe Shane was given an opportunity after the 2022 season where he could have pivoted. And you see it around the league multiple times that teams pivot and they make harsh decisions, but they are confident and they believe the decision that they're making is the right one, and it works. At the time, you may not agree with it, or at the time you're like, wow, that's risky. But you gain the respect and you gain the ability for people to trust you based on the moves that you make after the fact. And Joe Shane has failed in every asset. In the Jones negotiations, they negotiated with themselves. They never allowed him to go out into the market and test the market and allowed him to do that. The Minnesota Vikings are doing that right now with Sam Darnold. They are not going to tag him. They could have tagged him, right? That tag would have been worth $40 million. And they basically would have been negotiating with themselves, but they said, you know what? You had a good year. You go out there, you find out what your market is, and we'll go from there. They're letting the market, they're letting the free agent market set his price, and that's where they're going to go with negotiations. And if he does go back to them, at that point, it gives them leverage where he's going to go back for their price. Hey, you thought you were going to get Y? You're not getting Y. I'm offering you X. Do you want to take it or not? What do you think he's going to do? Right? So you didn't do that. You overpaid Daniel Jones. You cracked under pressure. You were given a second chance. You were given a second chance after the 2023 season where you could have taken a quarterback. You could have had the next guy ready to rock and roll. Daniel Jones leaves, and you would have been set. You took the wide receiver. You took the wide receiver. You passed on the quarterback. You were given a second chance to try to right the wrong that you did, and you passed. And here we are yet again. You were given a third chance, a third opportunity to yet again right the wrong, to reset the organization and draft a rookie quarterback, which I believe they're going to get. But at this point, or at least I hope they're going to get. But now you are so desperate that you're going to have to overpay for it. You're going to have to overpay. And not just in the draft, but you're probably potentially might be having to overpay in free agency. Because the agents know you're desperate. They know the way you negotiate. And they're going to try to take advantage of you, Joe. They are going to try to milk you for everything that they could possibly milk you for. So, you have two failed draft classes for the most part. One draft class that, you got some decent players in. What are they going to do? And now this regime is back. This regime is back, and they are going into year 4, and they need to win. And they are going to do desperate things. Now, I'm okay with them spending in free agency, but if you're getting a rookie quarterback, but if you are going to go in and you're going to just sign a Rodgers or you're going to sign a Russell Wilson and you're going to pass on a quarterback in the first round, you're going to spend big in free agency, and then hopefully you try to get lucky and trade back into the first to get a Jackson Dart or take Jackson Dart in the second round. I'm sorry, but what are you at that point? What are you doing? What are you doing? So as of right now, I will say this. I believe if they take a rookie quarterback, that this regime will be back for another year. Because I don't believe that John Mara is going to want to do the same thing that he did with Daniel Jones, where if that rookie is showing some promise, regardless of the record, if that rookie is showing improvement and showing some flashes of things with this current regime, they are going to want to let this regime kind of see it through. When he pulled the trigger early on Pat Shurmur with Daniel Jones. And I think that's going to be his mindset. And these guys will see 2026. They will see 2026. If they do not take a quarterback and this team struggles and loses, they are fired. They are completely done. Now, positives, right? I don't think we have a lot of dead cap. Don't really have a lot of dead money. Right? You have some key guys that are on the contract, but you really don't have any dead money other than Daniel Jones. And then after this year, that's over. So what are they going to do? Where are they going to go from here? Right? In free agency, they need to attack it by adding some good veteran players at some key positions that they're lacking in. And in this draft, they need to get their quarterback and they need to build inside the trenches. This is a good line draft on both the offense and defensive side, where you can get some good quality depth and take some chances, right? Receivers class, you just drafted Neighbors, but I mean the receiving class is not that strong. It's a good running back class for the most part, right? There's a lot of decent running backs that you could grab. So build from the inside out. Build your line. That's what they need to do. That's what Joe Shane needs to do. So the state of the Giants right now is we are in a state of poverty. We are in a state that John Mara has put us in where we are the laughing stock of the National Football League. We are the joke. We are the organization that when you show up, everybody is mumbling something about you. They have to change that narrative. And it starts right now. Otherwise, your jobs will pay for it. Their jobs will pay for it unless they don't. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat things with you here on this channel. I never have. I never will. I'll give it to you straight. They have a lot to do. And if you are somebody that likes Brian Daboll or likes Joe Shane and thinks that they've got what it takes and thinks that they've been held back by this owner, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you shouldn't feel the way you want to feel. By all means, support them. But they are not good at their job. They are not good. Joe Shane does not know how to run this team. Brian Daboll has a lot of question marks as far as being a coach and utilizing his personnel on this roster. Even this year where you knew your kicker was injured, but you didn't bring in another kicker. And then you go into the Washington game with no kicker. No kicker. I mean, that's on the head coach. So, let me know in the comments section what you guys think. Where are you guys at right now with this regime going into this 2025 off season? Let me know what you guys are feeling. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. It does help with the algorithm and helping the video get noticed. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and make sure to turn on those bell notifications so that you never miss another upload. I'm R0B, signing off. Go Giants.